It looks like we're on Facebook Live. Ian says he's having a few computer problems. Hopefully he'll be on soon. So how was the inner work? Welcome to those of you who suddenly see us appearing on Facebook. I'm getting a little jaded in announcing it on Facebook and then not being able to actually go on Facebook. It feels like I'm offering something and taking it away. But apparently we're live on Facebook now, the online Gurdjieff group, our regular Sunday morning meeting. And today I'm going to be really enhancing everything that I've talked about before about buffers. So this is the buffer meeting, and hopefully at the end of this meeting you will have a real understanding of what buffers are within you, how to locate them, and possibly how to start thwarting them. So how are things in Mexico, Karen? Let's go up to you. Right now, where I am, you're at the top of my screen.
Well, I'm well. Our exchange group started up last week, so I'm very grateful to be back with my fellow workers. And
this is your real group, your face-to-face group.
Well, yes. I mean, I call this a real group too.
Yeah.
A real in-person, face-to-face group, yes. So everything's good here. We've had a terrible drought, though. It's very bad. And I hope the food supply will be okay.
Yeah. Angelica, how are things going down in Sao Paulo, Brazil?
Yesterday was Independence Day.
Oh, okay.
From Brazil. And
do we say parabéns or bon anniversario?
Parabéns.
Parabéns, okay.
Parabéns.
Okay.
And, just a minute.
Yeah. Actually, I'll move over to Hisham. How are you doing, Hisham? I'll get back to you in a minute, Angelica. Hisham, how are you?
Everything is good. Here in Morocco, the weather is getting a little bit changed.
Okay.
So it started a little bit raining today.
A little bit raining. So, and it's raining in Morocco. It's beautiful and sunny here in Toronto, but we're about 19 degrees. So we've lost the heat. Well, what's the temperature in Morocco in North Africa?
Well, now it is about 20, 22 degrees.
Oh, that's not bad at all. Yeah. How was your inner work going, Hisham? Okay, I think you've frozen. Yeah, it looked like you're frozen. I'm going to go back to Angelica. How are things, Independence Day, and was there a big celebration, a big birthday party for Brazil?
Yes, there was a celebration with the president. But our president today will across the forced surgery after atentado, né? Yes, it was a day of celebration.
Yeah.
And
yeah, during those celebrations like Independence Day or Canada, we call it Canada Day, you can really get a chance to watch a certain degree of artificiality, because you're not really a Brazilian. I'm not really a Canadian. These are ideas that we hold in our mind and that we've been raised since little children to think we are these things. But you ask me what it means to be a Canadian, and you ask someone else who's a Canadian what it means to be a Canadian. You ask us to sit down and write out a list of what it means to us, and they will be very different because of our experiences. Because of, if you've traveled as well, and you've traveled a lot and spent years living in other countries. So it makes you realize that, what we identify as in terms of being part of a nationality is not necessarily what everyone else does. Karen would know that as well. Being an American living in Mexico, outside of America, but so close to America, and just watching what's going on there. So days like Independence Days and, the celebrations and the parties that people have give us an opportunity to observe a degree of mechanicalness within us. Ian, how are things going in Portland, Oregon?
Things are going good. We seem to have hit fall. It's been raining. It started yesterday. It's raining today. It's going to rain tomorrow. Maybe thunderstorms. Definitely in the weather.
So raining today, raining tomorrow, rain next month, the month after.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I got family coming out on Tuesday, so I'm hoping there's at least some chance to get out, explore a little bit. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're so close to the mountains and the weather patterns and everything. Is that what happens? It just rains on you. It comes in off the ocean, and
yeah, I'm not sure, which direction it's coming from, but because we've got Hood over to the east, and then we've got a small coastal range over to the west. But it rains a lot here, but it never rains very heavily.
Okay.
Light. You can go out with just a hood or an umbrella.
Yeah. Brian, there you are driving in your car. Can you hear us? How are things in your part of the world, Scottsdale, Arizona? You're going scuba diving today?
I'm doing scuba training this weekend, and then I'll be in Mexico for the next 2 weekends doing scuba diving there.
Okay, so the scuba training, you're getting trained to go diving in Mexico?
Yeah, it's a 4-day certification, and then once you get certified, you can go to any scuba location in the world for life.
Yeah.
But you need to get this license to do it first.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. The actual act of scuba diving, we don't get many chances in our life to really play with the moving instinctual center, particularly the moving center. But learning to scuba dive would certainly be one of those things, because you're physically in an alien environment. You've got to have the respirator. You've got to pay attention to all sorts of things that are going on. And it's all muscle memory, so to speak. It's all the moving center, which some people would, translate as muscle memory. But the body remembers things and sequences. So it gives you the opportunity of observing your moving center in action, your moving center learning. And quite often the moving center learns slowly at the beginning, because it's all done through the head brain. You make this movement and then make that movement, and then it seeps down into the moving center, and there's a certain fluidity to the movements that come. Are you there yet, Brian, with the fluidity, or is it still an artificial environment?
I mean, it was definitely awkward yesterday, but even towards the end of the day, I felt myself a lot more comfortable. So it's coming along.
Yeah.
But I think it'll take a little bit of time, especially once you get out in the open water. You just got to kind of know your limitations.
Yeah. It's learning your body underwater kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Just give me a second. I'm going to... I don't know why my screen is all messed up. Just give me a second. I don't know why I'm not able to share this. Let me see if I shut down. No. Let's see if this works now. I'm trying to share my screen, and it won't let me. Whoops.
Brian, where are you going scuba diving in Mexico?
I'm going to Cancun.
Uh-huh.
I was wondering how far you are from Cancun.
Well, I'm in the very center of the country.
Oh,
so it's a while over there.
Oh, all right. Yeah,
I've been there, though. It's beautiful.
Okay, good. I've never been there.
Just sorry, people. I don't know why I am not sharing this screen. We'll see if this works. Boy, technology. Here we are all online from all over the world, and I'm not able to share. This is going to be terrible for me because most of this show was... You see this? No.
Yeah, that worked.
You can see the buffers?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Going back to the inner work. I work for myself. I work for mankind. I work for the earther's self. And then Mr. Gurdjieff's vow, that was in Roger Lipsy's Gurdjieff Reconsidered. This was originally spoken in French to one of his French students during the Nazi occupation in Paris. It's been translated into English. I wish to be. And Mr. Gurdjieff is telling his French student to say this. I wish to be. I can be. I have the right to be. I have the ability to be. I swear to myself that this will never be for my personal profit, but to help others. I wish to be to help others. This is to be understood as a vow. And the whole point of the system is to be, is to exist, is to be fully present here and now, to be real and live in the real world. Mr. Gurdjieff's book, View from the Real World, Views from the Real World, or Life is Only Real Then When I Am. So when we're talking about to be, we're talking about to be real. We're talking about to grow our being. And that's what this is all designed to do. To understand the limitations, to understand the places where we need to work on ourselves. So let's just begin with a general self-sensing exercise. Let's first become aware of gravity. Become aware of the effect of gravity on our body, how it's pulling our body down, our sitting bones pressing down against the seat beneath us, perhaps underneath our thighs, the bottom of our feet. And then become aware of balance. Perhaps how your head is balanced on your neck, which is balanced on your shoulders, which is balanced on your shoulder blades, your rib cage, your breastbone, which is balanced on your spine, which is balanced on your pelvic bones. And then become aware of the atmospheric pressure of the air around you. Try and sense that atmospheric pressure. And then become aware of the temperature of the air around you. Try to notice the ambient room temperature. And then let's just move inward slightly and become aware of our internal temperature. Our internal temperature in Fahrenheit should be something like 94.5. I'm not sure what it would be in Celsius, just slightly below the temperature that they take with a thermometer, the external temperature of our skin. And then let's move inside. Let's become aware of the inside of our mouth, our tongue. Let's move down our throat and become aware of the inside of our throat. And let's move down into our esophagus, become aware of the inside of our esophagus. And then down into our stomach, becoming aware of the inside of our stomach. And then perhaps we can become aware of our bladder, perhaps our colon. Perhaps we can even become aware of how we're like this digestive tube that starts with our mouth and then goes down to our colon and our bladder. Become aware of the digestive tract, that sensation that we can experience within our body. Try to become aware of the inside of yourself. And then let's do J.G. Bennett's 60-point. This is partially a self-sensing and partially a relaxation and partially an awareness exercise. So the way we do this is, become aware of the top of your head, the crown of your head, breathe awareness into the crown of your head, and then breathe out tension, just relaxing that part of your body. And then breathe in awareness to the right side of your forehead, and then just breathe out tension. Then breathe in awareness to your right eye, and then breathe out tension. Breathe in awareness to the right side of your nose and face, and breathe out tension. Your right ear and the finer muscles in the right side of your head. The right side of your mouth and jaw. The right side of your neck and throat, or throat and neck. Your right shoulder. Your right elbow and upper right arm. Your right wrist and lower arm. The top of your right hand. Your right thumb. Index finger. Middle finger. Baby finger, or fourth finger. Baby finger. The palm of your right hand. Breathing in awareness and breathing out tension to the right side of your chest, the right side of your midriff, solar plexus, abdomen, the right side of your upper back and right shoulder blade, the right side of your middle and lower back, your right buttock and hip, your right upper leg and knee, your right lower leg and ankle, the top of your right foot, your right big toe, second toe, middle toe, and the hardest one, your right fourth toe, baby toe, your right heel, the bottom of your right foot, and now reversing this process, the bottom of your left foot and heel, your left baby toe, your left fourth toe, middle toe, second toe, big toe, the top of your left foot, your left ankle and lower leg, your left knee and upper leg, the left side of your hip and buttock, the left side of your lower back and up to your middle back, your left shoulder blade and the left side of your upper back, the left side of your abdomen, midriff, solar plexus, the left side of your chest, your left palm, your left baby finger, your left fourth finger, middle finger, index finger, and thumb. The top of your left hand, your left wrist and lower arm, your left elbow and upper arm, your left shoulder blade, the left side of your neck and throat, the left side of your jaw and mouth, the finer muscles in the left side of your head and your left ear, the left side of your face and nose, your left eye, the left side of your forehead, and then finishing with the top of your head. And I would like you to just let your attention relax for a moment and then just notice your breathing. Breathing in and then breathing out at your own pace. And the next time you breathe in, I want you to pull your awareness up the left side of your body from the bottom of your foot to the crown of your head. And as you breathe out down the right side of your body from the crown of your head down to the bottom of your right foot. Breathing in up the left side and breathing out down the right side. And as you breathe in up the left side, make sure to relax the left side. And as you breathe down the right side, make sure to relax it. Breathing awareness up your left side, and then breathing awareness down your right side. And then allow your attention to rest and just become aware of the bottom of your feet. And slowly allow your body to fill with sensation, starting with the bottom of your feet, filling with sensation up through your feet, filling with sensation up to your ankles, up to your knees, up to your hips and hands, filling with sensation up through your midriff, lower arms, to your midriff, solar plexus, elbows, up through your chest to your shoulders, upper arms, shoulders, shoulder blades, up through your neck and up through to the top of your head, filling your body with sensation, sensing your body from the bottom of your feet all the way up to the top of your head. And then allow your attention to rest and become aware of the atmosphere surrounding your body. As the earth has an atmosphere, so too we have an atmosphere. Most of the time it's fairly dispersed. Our thinking, our sensations, our feelings can disperse it. So keep your thoughts tranquil. Keep your sensations, your body tranquil. Keep your feelings tranquil. Keep your atmosphere tranquil. Draw it in close to you, perhaps a meter, meter and a half, 4 to 6 feet. Become aware of the boundary of your atmosphere, where you can notice the edge of your atmosphere. And in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 up to 3. And when I get to 3, breathe your atmosphere in, and as you breathe out, imagine something remains, some sort of emanations that settle within you. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in your atmosphere, and then as you breathe out, imagine that something remains, that the emanations settle within you. And then silently in your mind, repeat after me. May results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And then just slowly allow yourself to return. And as I've mentioned before in the past, there are certain things that I've thought about for years and years and years. And, you know, I'm trying to sort of share my understanding of things that I've thought about a long time. And at other times, I'm kind of challenged to sort of reach new heights. And the series that we've actually been doing, that we started with the misuse of sexual energy, is actually ending up in a discussion on buffers. And I've been doing a lot of pondering in the last few weeks of what buffers are. And the most important thing that I've done is actually I've caught some of my buffers. I put myself in situations where buffers become active, and I've watched them. And so I now have a much clearer understanding of buffers. But a lot of what I'm going to explain is very theoretical as well. So the place as well, and this is a question that Hisham asked, you know, privately, you know, on you know, our group wall last week, was about dogs. And there's a strong relationship between what Mr. Gurdjieff talks about dogs and buffers. I'm just going to again share my screen. Okay, that thing disappeared. Can you see this? I wish to be. I can't tell if we're watching this or not. Can someone tell me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to jump to the end. My conclusion, Mr. Gurdjieff says that buffers are, and let me just focus in, buffers are appliances. They are, he calls them mechanical appliances. And to me, in researching the nature of buffers, is there's a certain part of us, and right now my intuition working through it tells me that buffers exist at the level of a world 96. They are sub-personality. They are below the personality. They are below the various eyes. And as you can see with the picture I have below, you've got two train tracks, and the train can go off to the right, or the train can go straight ahead. And there are these switching mechanisms that would switch it, allowing the trains to either deviate, and I suppose I should have done this one and flipped it around in reverse, if we have a deviation going off. There's a part of us, and I believe it exists in the octave of air, and I believe it's a very low part in the octave of air. And when I say believe, right now, this is my working hypothesis. I understand a lot more than this, but this is my attempt to theoretically explain it. That we have these switching mechanisms within inside ourselves that allow us to feed off C12. So the misuse of C12, there should probably also be a buffer over here at the underneath the octave of impressions, but I have to work through that particular issue. I'm not sure why that is not disappearing, sorry. So it's like a switching mechanism. And there's a part of us, and I believe actually more so than the underneath the dough, so 12, C12. C12 is in pink, So 12 is in green. C12 is sexual energy. It's the highest energy that the human body naturally produces. C12 is implicated in the development of our being. It's implicated in the sensation of ourself. It has all of these characteristics. Now, So 12, and I don't think I've really discussed this before, but So 12 is the molecule of conscience. Conscience, and I've talked about conscience in past meetings, conscience plays a huge role in the Gurdjieff teachings. Remorse of conscience, overcoming our past, repairing our past. But conscience, Mr. Gurdjieff says that conscience is the only genuine, sacred being impulse that has not degenerated. He talks about love, hope, and faith as being impulses that have degenerated. The only one that hasn't degenerated is conscience. And I believe that, of the octave of air, of the emotions, So 12 is actually the molecule of conscience. And what buffers do is they turn off our awareness of conscience. They break us from conscience. Buffers are anti-conscience. They don't want us to tap into conscience. So it's like a lever that gets switched that allows us to then misuse C12 or the sexual energy. So this is just a general introduction. Now I'm going to come to, these are my notes, buffers and justification. I'll go into quotes. Mr. Gurdjieff says, and this is his term, or actually, more correctly, it's the term that he used in Russian, and Uspensky translated them into English as artificial appliances. And I think this is probably a very accurate translation. It's like we have these small little artificial appliances, these switches down here that switch things over so that the train goes in a certain way. So we have these small artificial appliances within us. And there's a smell that we can associate with them. Mr. Gurdjieff also talks about the words of vehemence. These appliances are responsible for the indulgence in every kind of weakness, in shutting your eyes to your own errors, in striving to avoid all unpleasant truths, in constant lying to yourselves, in self-justification, in blaming others. So indulgence of every kind of weakness, shutting your eyes to your own errors, avoiding unpleasant truths, lying to yourself, self-justification, and blaming. And these are the predominant characteristics of buffers. So let me just move down. So buffers are not eyes. They are not at the level of personality. We don't flip into buffers. Buffers are the little switches that flip us into different eyes. They are artificial appliances. And when he said artificial appliances, to me, this means that it's lower than world 48, which is the mechanical realm. This goes down to the realm of feeding the moon. These appliances are somehow subpersonality. And a very big one is self-justification. Oh, you can have that cigarette, or oh, just one drink won't do it, or whatever your weakness happens to be. And we can notice these buffers and this process around our weaknesses, around our dogs, better than we can anywhere else. And we only have certain weaknesses. I'll get to this later, like smoking cigarettes, alcohol, and sex are where we can create these dogs. And this is where we notice this. They can actually speak in our language. They're part of us. It's a part going, oh, go ahead and do it. Or, man, a drink would be really good right now. Or, yeah, just a cigarette. Or, no, it was their fault. They made me take this drink. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting in this bar. They're these mechanical things. And they seem like their personalities. They seem to be sort of fully complete, except when you look at them and examine them, you realize how one-sided they are. And they're like that flip. They're like a switch that is trying to get us to flip away from conscience, away from the truth, away from reality, towards the self-justification, the lying to oneself, the blaming oneself. Artificial appliances created to not to feel conscience. So going back here, to prevent us from feeling conscience, we have these buffers, these mechanisms within us that they flip and they cause us and they turn off the ability to feel conscience. So if we want to drink, if that's one of our weaknesses, if one of our weaknesses is sex, turn it off. If one of our weaknesses is smoking or drug addiction, we don't have a lot of possibilities for dogs within us, but when we have dogs within us, it gives us a real opportunity to become aware of our buffers. We interact with buffers all the time. They are artificial appliances so far down our subconscious that we fail to perceive them. They are sub-personality. And again, these are my own notes. These are not quotes. They are most noticeable around our strongest and biggest weaknesses, our dogs. They are enabling blind spots. So whenever we enable ourselves, that little boy said, oh, go ahead and do that. Just go see look at them having fun out there drinking on that patio. Just stop by for a drink or one cigarette. You deserve a cigarette or, you deserve to treat yourself. There's some kind of enabling quality. It's like our own voice. I believe Mr. Gurdjieff at one place said they're almost like mini roles. They're like these pre-recorded recordings within us that have this feeling and this desire to go and do something. But, they're enabling, they're justifying. At their core, they are really lying and deceiving. It's ways of flipping away from conscience into the misuse of C12. So self-calming is buffer enhancing. And those of you who have not read Tales, self-calming is any kind of major addiction we have, whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, heroin, marijuana, gambling, sex, all of the major addictions are all self-calming. Addictions themselves actually make buffers grow stronger. The biggest thing that anyone who is addicted, whether or not it's to cigarettes, to alcohol, to marijuana, to heroin, to whatever, the biggest thing is that enabling voice within. Go ahead, it doesn't really matter, you deserve it. All sorts of those little snippets of conversations that they seem to come from deep within us, and they undermine our sense of morality. They undermine our ability to connect with Soul 12, with conscience. They block conscience. The justifiers within, enabling mechanisms, sometimes connected to our self-talk. So you deserve it. Go ahead. Why not? You've had a hard day. Oh, your life hasn't been good to you. All of these excuses that we have in our head, these excuses are buffers. And sometimes they come up as physical habits. So we just find ourselves doing something without even realizing that we were going to do it. And it's, geez, why am I doing this? Sometimes they're feeling maskers. And the feeling here is so 12. It's the feeling of conscience that they're masking. So a big one is alcohol. Alcohol knocks out the prefrontal cortex and makes us act stupid. But worse than making us act stupid, alcohol is really flipping this switch in a major way. And by flipping this switch, you know, it creates even bigger buffers. And so buffers tend to coagulate and surround our biggest weaknesses. And also, you know, despair, inadequacy. You know, I deserve this. I've had such a long day. I've worked so hard. I deserve this, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 drinks. And it's that enabling part. And they're little subroutines. They're more mechanical than mechanical. In other words, they're the level lower than World 48. This last bit is my guess. Everything else I'm pretty certain about, but I believe they exist at the level of World 96, and they block conscience. So 12 of the octave of air. So they're designed so that this molecule, the one in green, doesn't really become a part of our life, but we use and misuse C12. It's like little switches within us. So now going to Mr. Gurdjieff's words. And here you'll notice that in Cayenne, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are, you know, these are dogs, so to speak, but they're not. There are things about the misuse of C12 and people's sexuality that are problematic. And number 5 is constantly working buffers. So only a person who is completely normal as regards sex has any chance in the work. Any kind of originality, strange tastes, strange desires, or on the other hand, fears, constantly working buffers must be destroyed from the very beginning. Modern education and modern life create an enormous number of sexual psychopaths. They have no chance at all in the work. And we've talked about this before. When you associate pain with sexuality, so you get involved in, SM. When you do that, you are no longer a normal human being. When he talks about only a person who is completely normal, that is not the quality of a normal human being. A lot of the sexual perversion and psychopathy that exists out there in the world just means and makes sure that the people following that are not normal human beings. To be a normal human being requires normal sexual functioning. And so any real kind of kinky sex, particularly where it involves pain, is one of the things that prevent us and is most implicated in the misuse of C12, the sexual energy, but constantly working buffers also do the same thing. They allow for that misuse of energy, whether or not it's in imagination in the form of daydreaming, whether or not it is in the quest to climb a mountain or to write a book, or the other aspects of the misuse of sexual energy within the intellectual center. There's always a constantly working of the buffers at the lower level so that we don't see this shift away from conscience and this misuse of C12. This is the abuse of sex. It is necessary further to remember that the sex center works with hydrogen 12. This means it is stronger and quicker than all of the other centers, all other centers. Sex, in fact, governs all other centers. The only thing in ordinary circumstances, that is, when a man has neither consciousness nor will, and here, these two words need an explanation. Consciousness is me 12. If I came over here, the me 12, that's on the same level as the so 12, that's at the same level as C 12. This is consciousness over here. This is will. And this is conscience. So whenever you hear Mr. Gurdjieff refer to will, he's referring to a hydrogen 12 phenomenon, as is conscience. These are all, let me just get rid of those and come back to here. So neither consciousness nor will. Will is an attribute of C12. Consciousness is an attribute of me 12. Me 12 is the octave of impressions at level. Conscience is the one between them, so 12. So the only thing in ordinary circumstances, that is, when a man has neither consciousness nor will, in other words, they haven't grown their being at the level of C12 and me 12, that holds the sex center in submission, is buffers. Buffers can entirely bring it to naught. That is, they can stop its normal manifestation, but they cannot destroy its energy. The energy remains and passes over to other centers, finding expression for itself through them. So C12, the sexual energy, what buffers allow us to do is to tap in to C12 and misuse it either with the intellectual center or with the emotional center and even with the physical center. Though the two primary ways are the emotional center through daydreaming and imagination, and the intellectual or an octave of impressions through, you know, the wanting to be the first and writing books to, you know, show how good we are and all of that. Those are the different ways. But the energy remains and passes over to other centers, finding expression for itself through them. So the 12 is supposed to combine with, C12 is supposed to combine with Soul 48, but it ends up combining with Me 12 or Me 48 or Do 48. There's that improper connection, like, you know, wiring up a light bulb, you know, that could be 12 volts to 8 volt battery. We're miswiring things. In other words, the other centers rob the sex center of the energy which it does not use itself. So that lever switches over and it allows the other energies to feed off that energy. The energy of the sex center in the work of thinking, emotional and moving centers can be recognized by a particular taste, by a particular fervor, by a vehemence. Which the nature of the affair concerned does not call for. So somehow the flipping of this lever, tapping in and feeding off of C12, the activities associated with that have a fervor and a vehemence associated with them. I would also say that there's a certain egocentric dimension to that behavior. It's a me, my, mine, a very grasping awareness. So there stand behind you many years of a wrong and stupid life. And here in Cayenne, I've added these numbers, and these are the different manifestations of buffers. So buffers create this. The indulgence. So behind you stand many years of a wrong and stupid life. One, indulgence of any kind of weakness. Oh, come on, you deserve that Coke. Or yeah, have some sugar, or that piece of pie, or that alcohol, or whatever, where you're just indulging yourself in weaknesses. Two, shutting your eyes to your own errors. And boy, do we do this one a lot. We can see the mote in our brother's eyes, but we've got this mechanism inside ourselves that when it clicks over, we don't see our own errors. We don't see our own weaknesses. There's an element of justification to all of our behavior, an enabling quality that we overlook the error of our own errors, our own improper working, of striving to avoid all unpleasant truths. We can think of the American evangelicals in support of Trump. What kind of buffer? There's a lever within them to avoid, and it's also within us to avoid unpleasant truths. It's like a fuzz maker so that everything becomes a little fuzzy and we don't have to deal with it. It's a mechanism within us. It's a switch. And as I said, the switch can speak to us in words and impulses, and it seems really intelligent. But if we look at it and we observe it, and the more we look at it and the more we observe it, the more we realize it's like this mechanical snippet. It's not even a full personality. It's not even a real I. It's like this impulse, this nasty impulse within us to flip over and ignore things. So avoid all unpleasant truths. 4, of constant lying to yourself. And we do this all the time, it'll only be one drink, or it's just a chocolate bar, or, how can flirting hurt, or whatever. There's an element of deceit. There's an element involved in trying to avoid conscience. So conscience is doing the right thing. Conscience is leading a truly, objectively moral life. Conscience is doing the right thing. And so this is, those lies that prevent us from tapping into conscience. And then self-justification. Within myself, the label, the big thing when I first grabbed onto an experience of the buffer was, I called it the justifier within. It was trying to justify something. Oh, go ahead, just one won't hurt you, and there's this justifier within us. It's an enabler. It allows us to engage in our worst habits. It allows us to block out the light of conscience. It allows us to block out that awareness of conscience, remorse of conscience, all of that by, enabling, justifying. Now, this is not a really profoundly intelligent part of ourselves. It's actually pretty stupid. It seems to be this whole impulse, but it's just like a switch. And, if you catch it and say, liar or deceitful or enabler, and you call it something like that, you stop it manifesting. You stop its powers within you. So number 7, blaming others. You know, well, if it wasn't for the rain today, I wouldn't be having this drink, but I got so wet. Blaming others, blaming the environment. Oh boy, it was so hard at work today and my boss was so mean. I deserve this. So all of this cannot help affecting the machine. The machine is dirty. In places it is rusty. And in some places, artificial appliances, and this is his term for buffers, have been formed. The necessity for which has been created by its own wrong way of working. These artificial appliances will now interfere very much with all your good intentions. So this is another good definition. So these subpersonalities, these switches within us that are designed to thwart our good intentions. These are what keep us locked into personality. These are what keep us asleep. They are called buffers. Buffer is a term which requires special explanation. We know what buffers are on what buffers on railway carriages are. They are contrivances which lessen the shock when carriages or trucks strike one another. If there were no buffers, the shock of one carriage against another would be very unpleasant and dangerous. Buffers soften the results of these shocks and render them unnoticeable and imperceptible. So when conscience strikes the misuse of sexual energy, or they smash together, conscience or buffers are the actual mechanisms that prevent us from experiencing the shock of these contradictions. The shock of remorse of conscience is reduced or removed through the use of buffers. If buffers didn't exist, we would go crazy. The amount of remorse of conscience that we would feel, the contradictions within ourselves that we would feel. So it prevents this shock from happening. Exactly the same appliances are to be found within man. They are created not by nature, but by man himself, although involuntarily. The cause of their appearance is the existence in man of many contradictions. Contradictions of opinions, feelings, sympathies, words, and actions. If a man throughout the whole of his life were to feel all of the contradictions that are within him, he could not live and act as calmly as he lives and acts now. He would have constant friction, constant unrest. So this is designed to allow us to sleep. If this didn't exist, we would always have this little torment in the background, this constant unrest, this constant unease. And by flipping these switches, life becomes easy and we can do things that we really want to do, but we shouldn't do. And we can be mean and nasty and all sorts of things that accrue and arise as a result of buffers that we don't really see because they're very sub-personality. They are lower than the mechanical level, which makes them even harder to notice. It's like they're in the background. But when we focus on them, when we learn what they are and how they manifest through those little words, oh, you deserve it, or there, whatever, you know, it's been a rough day, or it's just going to be one, or whatever, the little enabler, justifier, the blamer inside, oh, it was their fault. If they weren't like that, I wouldn't have had to vote for Donald Trump. But, you know, they're just so liberal or whatever, you know, these little justifiers that prevent us from experiencing all of the shock that would normally happen if a buffer didn't exist and those higher parts of ourself began to collide. We fail to see how contradictory and hostile the different eyes of our personality are to one another. if a man were to feel all these contradictions, he would feel what he really is. He would feel that he is mad. It is not pleasant to anyone to feel that he is mad. So again, you know, I don't mean to, well, I do mean to, using the American evangelicals and their support of Donald Trump. If they realized, you know, supporting someone whose morals are so out of alignment with theirs, if they had to feel that, if they had to feel what it meant to use and justify their Christian beliefs to support that kind of behavior, it would kind of drive them crazy. They would sort of like be a dog chasing their tail. But through these buffers, they don't see the contradictions. All of these different eyes that are really antagonistic to each other are all allowed to sort of slumber together. And when we flip from one to another to prevent us from waking up, the flip switches, the buffer steps up, and so that we don't have to worry about it. Moreover, a thought such as this deprives a man of his self-confidence, weakens his energy, deprives him of self-respect. So he's saying without buffers, most people would be driven crazy by their contradictory nature. It would make them lose confidence, energy, self-respect. And so these buffers support the ego. They support this illusionary understanding of who we are, that we are good, moral people, and every once in a while we make mistakes, but we can justify all sorts of things. So somehow or other, he must master this thought or banish it. He must either destroy contradictions or cease to see and feel them. A man cannot destroy contradictions, but if buffers are created in him, he can cease to feel them, and he will not feel the impact from the clash of contradictory views, contradictory emotions, contradictory words. So here an important word is clash, clash of contradictory views. So buffers prevent our contradictions from running into each other. Now, this is not to say that when we flip the switch into a buffer, the unpleasantness disappears. It doesn't. There are many alcoholics who are aware that they're alcoholics. They beat themselves up all the time because they're alcoholics. They're drinking and thinking, why did I start this cycle again? Why am I drinking? And they are aware of their other personalities. They're aware of their other better eyes. It's not putting us into a state of blindness. So it's not like we are in one eye and then we flip into another and we've lost all memory of that initial eye. But it's a way that we deal with it, a way that we minimalize the impact and the shock and the pain that would arise if we were to fully be present in our weaknesses and realize, what we've done and the nature of the justifications. The buffers serve an absolutely important process within us. They allow us to live with our contradictions. We may be aware of it. They may be going to sleep thinking Donald Trump is not that good of a person. But, I believe in the Ten Commandments and I have this strong moral outlook in the world. And, there are times when that can come to the surface and be a lot more painful. And then a buffer. Oh, well, he's like King Cyrus. And King Cyrus allowed the Jews to move back to Jerusalem in 520 BC. And King Cyrus wasn't really that good of a moral man, but he really moved things and shifted things. And so they can work on and develop this buffer. And so it prevents them from experiencing that contradiction between their beliefs and their political outlook. It prevents them from experiencing the contradiction between having those beliefs and walking into the voting booth and, clicking, putting a mark on where they put. It blocks out the ability to feel this shock, to feel this contradictory, to feel the pain. Buffers are created slowly and gradually. Many buffers are created artificially through education. So, a teacher to a grade 2 class, well, we don't have to do that right now, or, you don't have to do that lesson, or who knows what behavior. Usually there's an element of insincerity. The personality thrives on insincerity. It's not our true self. And so, we watch people. We watch our parents. Most parents are very hypocritical, and children are fully aware of this, how people suddenly show up and they begin to behave in a different way. And it's the buffers that allow them to shift over. And there are a lot of buffers we learned in childhood through education. Here, others are created under the hypnotic influence of all surrounding life. A man is surrounded by people who live, speak, think, and feel by means of buffers, imitating them in their opinions, actions, and words. A man involuntarily creates similar buffers in himself. So again, I'm going to talk about the present political situation in the U.S. You've got people like, I think his name is Tony Perkins, people like Jerry Falwell Jr., people like Billy Graham's son, I forget his name. They are immense buffers, and they create immense buffers in their followers. Particularly Donald Trump says something that should be out and out condemned, and they are in buffer mode, switching. And so their supporters, their followers are learning that through imitation. If Billy Graham's son can do it, if Jerry Falwell's son can do it, if Tony Perkins can do it, and so these buffers get created, and they make it much more easy for a person to live. They smooth out all of our contradictions. It is a very hard life to live without buffers, but they keep man from the possibility of inner development, because buffers are made to lessen shocks, and it is only shocks that can lead a man out of the state in which he lives. That is, waken him. So, that flipping of the switch, it reduces the shock. You can stop that and experience the shock. That will help you to awaken. So buffers lull a man to sleep, give him the agreeable and peaceful sensation that all will be well, that no contradictions exist, and that he can sleep in peace. And this is waking sleep. Just get out of their normal life. Buffers are appliances by means of which a man can always be in the right. And I've put this in cayenne to emphasize it. Buffers help a man not to feel his conscience. So buffers are all connected to conscience. The next quote. But fortunately for man, that is, for his peace and for his sleep, this state of conscience is very rare. From early childhood, buffers begin to grow and strengthen in him, taking from him the possibility of seeing his inner contradictions. And therefore, for him, there is no danger whatever of a sudden awakening. Awakening is possible only for those who seek it and want it, for those who are ready to struggle with themselves and work on themselves for a very long time and very persistently in order to attain it. For this, it is necessary to destroy buffers, that is, to go out and meet all those inner sufferings which are connected with the sensations of contradictions. And notice the word sensations. There's a physical dimension to the misuse of C12. So there's a certain level of sensation of contradictions, and the removal of buffers makes us experience that. Moreover, the destruction of buffers in itself requires very long work and a man must agree to this work, realizing that the result of his work will be every possible discomfort and suffering from the awakening of his conscience. In the life, and another quote now, in the life of an ordinary man, truth and falsehood have no moral value of any kind because a man can never keep to one single truth. His truth changes. If for a certain time it does not change, it is simply because it is kept by buffers. And a man can never tell the truth. Sometimes it tells the truth. And the it is buffers. We can't even say I. We have to speak of them as it. It tells a lie. Consequently, his truth and his falsehood have no value. Neither of them depends on him. Both of them depend on accident. And this is equally true when applied to a man's words, to his thoughts, to his conceptions, and to his conceptions of truth and falsehood. So buffers can be on all those levels. In order to understand the interrelation of truth and falsehood in life, a man must understand falsehood in himself, the incessant lies he tells himself. And here, just to point out, again, lying, blaming, self-justifying, they're all different techniques to diminish the effect of conscience, to block conscience out. So wherever there is self-deception, deception, lying, distorting, self-justification, enabling, blaming others, these are all buffers. These lies are created by buffers. In order to destroy the lies in oneself as well as the lies told unconsciously to others, buffers must be destroyed. When his name is coming now, Franklin Graham, Jerry Falwell Jr., Tony Perkins, I'm thinking, I could be wrong with that. Whenever they're speaking about that, they are in their buffers and are believing what they are saying. They need them in order to speak and say the things that they do. But then a man cannot live without buffers. Buffers automatically control a man's actions, words, and feelings. The buffer flips. It controls. If buffers were destroyed, all control would disappear. A man cannot exist without control, even though it is only automatic control. Only a man who possesses will, that is, conscious control, that is, they have developed something up to themselves at the level of hydrogen 12, the same level as C12. Only someone who has will can live without buffers. Consequently, if a man begins to destroy buffers within himself, he must at the same time develop a will. I don't want to run out of time. A very important moment in the work is when a man begins to distinguish between his personality and his essence. A man's real I, his individuality, can only grow from his essence. It can be said that a man's individuality is his essence growing up mature. But in order to enable essence to grow up, it is first of all necessary to weaken the constant pressure of personality upon it, because the obstacles to the growth of essence are contained in personality. The inner growth of man cannot begin so long as this order of things remain. Personality must become passive, and essence must become active. This can happen only if buffers are removed or weakened, because buffers are the chief weapon by the help of which personality holds essence in subjugation. So it all comes down to buffers and inhibiting buffers. If a man wishes to create individuality of his own, he must first free himself from general laws. General laws are by no means all obligatory for man. He can free himself of many of them if he frees himself from buffers and from imagination. All this is connected with the liberation from personality. Personality feeds on imagination and falsehood. And whenever you see the word falsehood, think of conscience. If the falsehood in which man lives is decreased and imagination is decreased, personality very soon weakens and a man begins to be controlled either by fate, which is, you know, controlled by the elements of the planetary realm of world 24 by fate, or by a line of work, and hopefully the line of work comes from higher. So a buffer, Merriam-Webster dictionary, any of various devices or pieces of material for reducing shock or damage due to contact. A means or device used as a cushion against the shock of fluctuations in business and financial activities. The online etymological dictionary, and etymology is the origin of words, studying where they come from. Buffer, something that absorbs a blow. Apparatus for deadening the concussion between a moving body and that against which it strikes. 1835, agent noun from obsolete verb buff, make a dull sound when struck. From Old French, buffet, a blow, slap, punch. Figurative sense of anything that prevents impact or neutralizes the shock of impact of opposing forces. That's 1858. That would have been the definition Mr. Gurdjieff would have been more aware of. Now, Hisham offline asked about dogs. And it's amazing how this all fits in together. This comes from G.I. Gurdjieff, Paris Meetings, 1943, page 65. Gurdjieff, talking to one of the students in Paris during the Second World War, the Nazi occupation. You must work. Kill some dogs in you. You only play your role in theory. At first you play it well, but very soon you forget and return to your ordinary state. Then later on, this is fertile ground for the development of being. Today, you are an ordinary man. Through working, try to be a real man. Later, you will perhaps be a complete man, a real man. When you are aware of your dogs, struggle with them. This struggle is necessary in order for you to become a real man. This is fertile ground for work. And there are still more dogs in you that are invisible. So the worst of our buffers are dogs, metaphorically. Mr. Gurdjieff, I would like to ask you something, and this is again from the 1943 G.I. Gurdjieff Paris meeting, transcripts 1943. My greatest difficulty in remembering myself is the mind, which is never focused. I can never relax it, make it quiet. Sometimes I don't believe in it, but when it is in movement, it has a lot of associations which I don't believe in, but which absorb me. This creates a duality that is very painful to me. Gurdjieff, we have spoken about dogs. This is one of your dogs. You have many of them in you. So this prevents us from experiencing the pain, prevents us from working on ourselves. So those previous quotes come from G.I. Gurdjieff, Paris Meetings, 1943. This one comes from Gurdjieff and the Women of the Rope, and it's transcripts of a meeting that he had at a cafe on Tuesday, January the 12th, 1937. And it's written by Catherine Hulme. It's the anniversary, the first year of her quitting cigarettes. And she described some of the experiences she went through in the process of quitting cigarettes and talking about dogs. And cigarettes are a wonderful place for observing our dogs. Those buffers, those really nasty ones, grow up around such habits. So this is the anniversary of my total abstinence from cigarettes. He speaks of man's dogs. So Catherine Hulme in Women of the Rope recording what Mr. Gurdjieff said to her. And she was called Crocodile. That was his nickname for her. Gurdjieff, this for you makes source for force. So the dogs of the cigarettes, the quitting, makes a source for force. But at the same time, any man cannot smoke. You must smoke, only not take habit. You not wish to do what any man can do. And quoted this quote in many different forms. Basically, Catherine Hulme, she wrote The Nun's Story. She was a writer, quite a remarkable lady. What she did, you know, with the International Red Cross in post-war Europe with the displaced personality people and the horrors that she saw. She became a welder in the Second World War because she wanted to experience something more motor. One of his remarkable students, she quit smoking. And now he's telling her after a year of quitting smoking that anyone can smoke. And a real person can smoke at will and using their will. And this boggles me. I don't know anyone who can quit smoking and then start smoking again. Well, actually, I know one person, when I think about it, who can just smoke a cigarette a month. Most people, once they quit smoking for a year, if they start again, they fall back down. He's describing smoking as one of her dogs. And then Karakadil, I remember your grandmother, and then Gurdjieff, smoke then. We speak of dogs, and Alice says a fine big car is one of hers. And Mr. Gurdjieff, no, this only artificial. Man, even artificial dog can have, such as man. Man have few dogs. Smoking is one, alcohol is another, sex is another, any form of addictive behavior are others. Our biggest weaknesses involve our biggest buffers. And so we have to be on guard for all of this. I can't believe it. I've actually made it through all of the material, and I just have a couple of, not long to spare. But look for this. They speak Portuguese, they speak Arabic. For me, they speak English. They're those little enabling voices. Go ahead, have that, do that. They're the things that help keep us from doing the right thing, from following our conscience, from living in accordance with our conscience. If there's some activity that does not align with our conscience, there's a buffer associated with some kind of lever that switches us over into that personality. Doesn't mean we're blind to our weaknesses, but we've given into them. We can see that pre-weakness state and we can think, oh, I wish I was in that, and I can't believe what kind of a loser I am, and why can't I control this, or whatever. And we see our weaknesses, but we are not shocked by our weaknesses. We are not, knocked out of alignment. There are ways of lessening the shock. So they're not blinders. They don't stop us from seeing how we were when we're good and now seeing that we're bad, but they make it easy for us to switch from one to the other, back again, and we don't see a lot of the contradictions. We don't see a lot of the negativity, but we can begin to notice them. Wherever that voice of justification arises, it's not a real personality, it's not a real I, but it's like this mechanical contrivance, this artificial appliance within us that goes, oh, come on, just buy that sugary drink, or, oh, come on, just have that drink, or, oh, just have that cigarette, or it's okay, you can be mean, you don't, we've had a hard day, you don't have to. It's always trying to justify the worst in us, to enable the worst, that little bit of self-talk. And if you pay attention, you realize it's not a fully formed personality. It's like this little tiny lever that gets activated. It's extremely mechanical. But because it's so mechanical, we can't see it. A machine is incapable of seeing itself. And when we are in the machine-like state, this is even lower than the machine-like state. The machine-like state is blind to this. So there's like a double blindness to this. But the more we exist in the mindful state, the more we are aware of these thoughts circulating around in our head, the more we can snatch. You know, that was an enabling thought. That was a justifying thought. That was one where I was blaming others for behaving a certain way that I am. And it's like they're little tiny manifestations. And if we are in the mindful state, we can usually, or at least my perception of them is the ability to capture them. Oh, look at you. And, you know, there's a taste of them, an enabling, a justifying, a self-enabling, self-justifying, blaming others, and sometimes even blaming ourselves. I was so stupid today, I deserve a drink, or whatever. And it always is justifying something that we shouldn't be doing, and it's preventing conscience from really surfacing its head and making us feel this contradictions. And just, you know, in the last second, the biggest ones are around our dogs. If you have no dogs in your life, if you've never had any dogs in your life, you're lucky. You know, for some people, their dog is alcohol. For others, it's marijuana. For others, it's cigarettes. For others, it's sex. There are a limited repertoire of major dogs within ourselves. So, for instance, if you smoke, try to quit and pay attention to those enabling, self-justifying voices within your mind that are trying to get you to have that cigarette. Oh, it's only one. What will, you know, one do? You deserve it. Oh, it's such a rough day. All of these things. Start paying attention to the enablers, to the self-justifiers, to the blamers. Well, if they weren't so mean to me, I wouldn't be in this state, or whatever. And those are the little pivot switches. They're like little appliances, little levers that allow us to move from one thing into another and lessen the shock. It doesn't mean that we can begin to see ourselves as, you know, princes and princesses, blameless, and we always behave impeccably. The longer we are on the work, the more we can see our weaknesses. And suddenly we're in a weakness and we didn't see ourselves shift into it. And it's the buffers. And if we can stop the buffers, if we can somehow interrupt the activity of the buffers, it will create a tremendous amount of suffering in us, a tremendous feeling within us, the terror of the situation, but it's from this suffering and this feeling and this release of buffers that we can begin to change. And the great thing about buffers is we can just work on this one, and then we can work on this one. We don't have to, and we shouldn't work on them all at once. Perhaps figure out where our dogs are and focus on those buffers. At any rate, I've gone a little over. I've given you a lot of information. You know, this is putting it in my subconscious and thinking and thinking and thinking about it. So I have never thought of buffers this way before. It's just Ian's question provoked me to really have to dig deep into this. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully I've given you a lot to think about. Look for those enabling, self-justifying, blaming voices within you. And they, to me, in my experience, they speak English. They're my voice. It's like it comes from inside me. It's like this dark being impulse. Just go ahead. You know, all of those, and try and figure out what yours are and then try to stop them. At any rate, thank you all for being present. You know, hopefully
Thank you, Al.
Thank
a lot of information.
Lots to think about.
A lot to think about, I hope. Okay, thank you very much. Everyone take care.